The cigarette smoke chokes me, but I don't let myself cough. Instead, I keep it inside. Everything in me wants to let it out, expel it like some kind of poison that disagrees with my organs. Still, I keep it inside. It's my first cigarette ever, in a classroom far away from the populated part of the school. I won't let myself look like a wimp, not in front of her. I couldn't give a crap about the popular kids standing with us in the room. I've never felt the need to care about them. However, when I heard the girl of my dreams was going with them, I just had to be there. That's pretty much how I found myself here. No one goes here anymore. Not after that kid died. Honestly, it was kinda sad. Some poor little girl gets lost and ventures into a neglected and dangerous part of the school on her own, on her very first day at that, and has a large table fall on her and injure her pretty badly. Then, slowly, she loses her life as she bleeds out. You'd expect there to be an outcry of some sort, yet the school pushes the blame onto the parents and bashes them. The local paper joins in, and before you know it, the whole town is bullying this family about not teaching their child proper safety rules. A 7-year-old girl was supposed to be taught proper safety rules. It sounds as ridiculous as it actually is. What do we get from all this? We get lectures on how we, as students, should keep the younger students safe. We get ghost stories that quickly spread across the school about the young girl and how she can still be heard crying. We get a special assembly today on the 1-year anniversary of her death, an assembly where we have a moment of silence for her. But don't worry, guys, refreshments are provided. Seems like everyone around here is an insensitive bastard. I pause my thought to find Alicia looking at me. I take another deep pull off the cigarette I'm holding. I take it better this time. I still feel the need to cough, but not as intense as before. Is this what romance is worth? Because as my brain gets cloudy and I drown in nicotine, it seems worth it. That is when the crying starts. I almost didn't hear it at first. It was soft, but definitely audible. I turn around, but there's nothing. We all start looking around. Have we been caught? None of our teachers would make that soft a sound if they caught us. Must be a small animal. Then it dawns on us all at once, and a nervous chuckle takes over the room. It can't be the stories about the dead girl. It just can't. It's probably just someone playing a prank on us. Still, the whole group slowly but surely creeps towards the door. No one admitting they're scared, but everyone ready to run at the same time. I take another pull off the cigarette, then I hear another cry. It's time for us to go. However, a thud behind us makes us turn around, and then a slam behind us makes us turn around again. Something distracts us, something in the dark of the room, just long enough for us to turn away from the door, long enough for it to slam shut. We're all trapped now. Everyone's scrambling, trying to open the door. The cool kids are still nervously chuckling, thinking it must just be the wind. However, the wind can't close a door hard enough for it to feel like it's been welded to the door frame. We can't get out of the room. That's becoming clearer now. You see, the thing about the light and the dark is that you can see in either one. The other just has to be absent. As the door blocks out the light from outside, the room inside becomes clearer. The dark corner is now taking shape. There's a desk there, a large, heavy one, and underneath it is a small frame. It looks like a doll, but it's faintly moving. It has to be a child. I'm not an idiot, not by any means. I'm a skeptic, definitely, but not an idiot. I'm seeing a ghost live out its last moments, a child live out her last moments. The cigarette is on the floor now, and so am I. We've all fallen to the floor, unable to move. I look around me, and it seems like we've been pinned by an invisible force. It sounds ridiculous, but it makes sense. A force more powerful than our meek bodies can handle. She's not living her last moments. We're living her last moments. I feel like I'm about to die. I'm not ready for this. I'm too young. I just want to go home to see my family. I just want to go back to class. I was so excited to see my friends today, to be around people who I care about. All things that she must have thought about. All things I'm thinking about now. I turn my head, and she's in the corner, sobbing, a child with nowhere to go, and no one to help her. Yet she keeps asking for help. I can't die here. I hope she gets help. I hope I get help. That's when I realize she never got help, and maybe neither will I. We're all going to die here, and I'm terrified by that thought. But I'm not the one I should be afraid for. My life, as scared as I am, doesn't matter. I should be helping the one that looks at me and sees me as someone older, someone who could have helped her. I turn to her and look in her eyes, into the eyes of the dying child, and speak to her. It's going to be okay, I say to her. It's all I can say with the weight on my chest. It's all I need to say. She stops sobbing and looks at me, almost as if she trusts me. I wish I could help, but I can't. The weight is now off my chest. Every one of us is able to get up. Every one of us is able to leave. And so is she. She disappears. I hope that it knows that wherever it's going to be okay. Outside the school, emergency services are waiting. Apparently, the same thing happened to every single person in school. They didn't see the ghost, but they did feel pinned down. Authorities are blaming it on a gas leak from years of neglect by the people in charge. When I hear that, I start to chuckle. I wonder who they're going to pin the blame on this time. "Are you really that afraid of the basement?" my boyfriend asked, almost casually, putting on his button-up shirt. I glared back at him. "You're seriously going to bring this up now? I'm getting ready for brunch," I said grumpily, pulling on my bra. He shrugged apologetically. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I just want to know why, especially if it's such a big issue. We can talk about it whenever you want, but I'd really like to talk about it eventually." His tone was calm, filled with sincere concern. I sighed. I felt my annoyance slip. I'd been avoiding the subject for so long. I really didn't want to bring it up, but Timothy had been so great. We'd been living together for over a year now, and he'd been very patient with me and my phobia of dark places. I don't just mean I'm afraid of the dark. I mean I go into full-on panic attack mode and start tearing up the walls with my bare hands and fingernails and teeth if I even get closed into a dark place. It makes going out at night or doing anything normal, like going to the cinema or the planetarium or a bar or a club, very difficult. I have a nightlight in every room in my apartment, and so plenty of backups, plus the flashlights, the candles, the lighter, pound of fresh batteries of all sizes. Of course, my smartphone can also function as a flashlight. I could go on, but suffice to say, I'm surrounded by as much light as possible. This was also why we were meeting Tim's parents for brunch in broad daylight, and not for dinner. Never dinner. I didn't leave the house once it got too close to sunset. I mostly drive wherever I need to go. Taking public transport is too risky, and I don't travel very much or very far. I also can't go into a bathroom that has no natural light and nothing but motion sensor based lights. If they go out for just a few seconds, my heart races, my blood boils from fear, and my lungs burn with panic. I scream and run, crying usually until I'm back in the light. I'm very lucky to have Tim around. Unlike my previous boyfriends, he never made snide remarks about my phobia, even when it disrupts his schedule. His effortless patience was a stark contrast to my previous relationships. I'd never seen him so much as raise his voice. I slowly sat on the edge of the bed. Okay, I'll tell you why. Right now, actually, if you'd like. I'd rather just spit it out. We have a few minutes, and it's not a very long story anyway. Timothy quickly pulled on his sock and came to sit next to me. I looked at him and then looked back down at the bed. I've never told this to anybody, but the reason I'm so afraid of the dark, of being alone, is because of what happened to me in the basement when I was 10 years old. I paused, and Tim took my hand. His fingers were rough and warm. I'd never had issues with the dark or the basement or anything like that before. One day my mom asked me to go down and fetch the laundry from the dryer. So I've been down in the basement of this house 1 billion times, and I think nothing of it at all. The door creaks loudly, just like normal, as I open it. I lazily walk down the steps and was busy messing around with my new Walkman when I suddenly heard the door slam shut behind me. I yelled and was plunged into darkness, so pure I thought I'd gone blind. I groped in the dark for the light switch. I heard it click as the light bulb buzzed to life noisily. As I spoke, I could feel my heart begin to accelerate. I could picture that basement now, that bare light bulb. My hand shook. Tim noticed this and began to caress my hands comfortingly. I continued. The basement wasn't that big or fancy. Nothing but bare concrete. We used it to store some old furniture and photo albums. Of course, we kept our laundry down there, too. I was a bit spooked by the door slamming, so I decided to get the chore over with fast. However, as my bare foot left the last step and touched the cold concrete floor, the light bulb glowed. It glowed so brightly that it burst. I screamed from fright, and I was just plunged into darkness again. It was so quiet that the distant sound of my parents or brother now extinguished. All I could hear was my own breathing. I paused again to catch my breath. It's been a long time since I told this story. All the memories that came with it filled me with terror. I moved in the direction of the laundry. I waved my hands in front of my face, but I couldn't see anything. I knew that there was a flashlight in the drawer of the desk next to the dryer. I took a few tentative steps, expecting any minute that I would feel bright pain as it exploded through my hip as I bumped into the desk. I never did, so I started taking bigger steps. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I realized that something was horribly wrong. I should have been on the other side of the room by now. A few steps after that, I should have been on the other side of the wall. Before I knew it, I was running. No, I was sprinting. I was hoping to be lucky enough to slam hard into the wall. It would prove my nightmare was a fake, but the wall never came. I ran through cold darkness. Then I heard a voice. Soft whisper. It was The voice of a man. There's nothing abnormal about his voice at all, but it gave me goosebumps. He warned me. He warned me never to return to the dark. He warned me to never tell anyone. My lips trembled, but I continued, my voice shaky. By then, I was beyond fear and incredulity. How could this be possible? Where was I? I yelped and shielded my eyes because it was suddenly blindingly bright, and I felt really cramped, like the room had just shrunk. Then strong hands were grabbing me and lifting me. I found myself being pulled from the wall. Tim's eyebrows shot up into his hairline at this point, but he remained quiet. We still have no idea how, but some men had heard a noise, and once they'd seen me, they rescued me immediately. They found me in a well that was hundreds of miles from my house, from that damn basement. I paused again, rubbing my temples with the tips of my fingers. I had to go to therapy, and no one could ever explain anything. Like I said before, I never mentioned what really happened to anyone. I didn't know whether I was more afraid of people thinking I was crazy, or if I was really more afraid of that voice. All I said was that I blacked out on my way downstairs. The therapist said I may have gone into a fugue state or something, which basically means that they don't have a goddamn clue what the hell happened to me. I continued to go to therapy for years and years, but it never helped. I felt I could never tell anyone the truth. Anyway, it all ended up in the papers, and my family and I had to move to a whole new town. After that, it was just kind of swept under the rug. People stopped asking questions. My parents never bring it up. They pretend it didn't happen. I like to do that too. So now that I've told you, I don't want to hear another word about it. If you tease me or prank me, so help me God, I'll dump your ass. I was trying to make a joke to help break the tension, but I could feel myself shaking more and more as I recounted the story. It had been some time since I'd thought about that traumatizing day. I felt tears from the corners of my eyes, but quickly blinked them away. Tim sat silently, his expression one of sympathy and concern. Wow, I had no idea. That sounds really horrifying. I completely understand your fear now. I'm feeling a bit less fond of the dark myself. He kissed me lightly on the forehead and rubbed my arm. I looked at him in disbelief. You don't think I'm crazy? You believe me? He smiled warmly. Of course I do. I can totally believe this universe is full of strange, unexplainable, sometimes horrifying things. He paused and looked me in the eye. But are you still okay for brunch with my folks? We can always reschedule, get McDonald's, watch some DuckTales or something. I smiled at him and chuckled. It's tempting, but no, we've booked a table and everything. Besides, it's too short notice now to cancel. Let's get going, okay? I feel okay. It was a long time ago. Tim glanced at me in a way that showed he was wholly unconvinced, but he yielded. All right, my dear. I'll just take the trash down quickly. Meet you downstairs. A few minutes later, I had my makeup on and was waiting downstairs on the ground floor. Tim had left ahead of me to take the trash to the refuse bin in the basement, and I'd expected him to be waiting for me already. But he wasn't there. I frowned, confused. Was he still downstairs? Why was he taking so long? I tried to keep my panic in check, but as the minutes ticked by, my heart began to thump loudly. No. There's no such thing as the dark place. There's no such thing as the monster in the basement. I stammered to myself softly as I tried to force the panic back down into the recesses of my stomach. He's I couldn't end that thought. What if by telling him the truth I put him in danger? The voice had said not to tell anyone. I thought that he would only be angry at me. But now, I'm starting to think otherwise. My blood was electrified with terror as I took a small step towards the stairs. The stairway was curved so that the door was hidden. I cranked my neck and peered around the corner. The large metal basement door was shut. Tim? Tim, is everything okay? My voice shook slightly as I spoke, but it was firm and loud. Silence pressed against my ears. I pulled my phone out of my bag. With the tap of a button, a small but bright flashlight switched on and illuminated the hallway. I turned the flashlight towards the stairs. With shaking hands, I took a step forward, started to descend. I halted after 3 steps. I felt dizzy now. Tim, this isn't funny. I'm really freaking... Then I heard him. Kara, I tripped and hit my head. I heard him groan in pain. I think I twisted my ankle. I really need some help. My fear instantly dissipated. Tim was hurt badly. His voice sounded really worried. If he'd been unconscious this whole time, he'd need serious medical attention. Shit, why had I waited so long to go check on him? Of course, there was no such thing as monsters. I hurried down the basement stairs and grabbed the door handle as I pulled it open. Complete, utter darkness pressed up against my eyes. I felt an unnatural coldness in the air. The basement door swung back and slammed into me so hard I felt myself fly through the air. I hit the ground hard and yelled with pain and surprise. The impact knocked my phone out of my hand and I heard it smash off as the light went out. What the hell? I stammered, my head swimming with confusion. Timothy, I whispered into the pure darkness. I was sitting on the hard, damp floor, which was the only other thing I could sense, besides the horrendous cold. My soft sobs and the musty smell. Then a gloomy light bloomed to life. My jaw dropped open in horror. It couldn't be possible. There, many yards in front of me, too far to be possible, a single bare light bulb was hanging. Its light was cold and small. It looked almost exactly like the light in my old basement. As I looked down, I yelled and began to wail loudly. Lying in the pool of light beneath the bulb was the mutilated, bloodied corpse of my dear sweet Timothy. The man who I had loved more than anything. The man I'd wanted to marry. The man who always made me feel safe. The man who knew exactly how I liked my coffee and pancakes. His gray eyes were empty as he stared at me. Gone was the perennial warmth and love. His body was covered in deep scratches, and blood soaked his clothes. Oh my God, he was dead. He was dead. Guilt, terror, pain, all kinds of things washed over me. Tears poured down my face, and I yelled incomprehensibly, pleading for someone to help. Without warning, another identical light bulb appeared before the first. My whimpering paused. Then again and again, my eyes widened with terror. Soon hundreds of lights were blooming into existence, like frigid miniature stars. The line of lights made a beeline towards me, with the final bulb flickering to life above my head. I heard the sizzle and hum of its electromagnetic field. I was frozen with terror. I had no idea what to do. My eyes burned with tears, and I squinted. Suddenly there was a loud pop. A bulb had exploded, and I shouted with fright. I gazed down the line of lights and gasped. At first all I saw were the shards of broken glass and the remnants of the broken bulb above. It had been the bulb right at the far end. My gaze shifted. A humanoid silhouette stood beneath the broken bulb. My heart stopped dead. No. I moaned softly, my brain unable to process the terror. Then the next bulb in the line burst, and the man instantaneously stood beneath it, one light closer to me. I screamed with fear and found myself clambering to my feet. I had to get out of here. As I struggled to stand in my panic, I heard another loud pop, as the next bulb blew. Then the next one exploded. Suddenly all the bulbs were exploding, one after the other, louder and louder. I saw the silhouette get closer and closer, as swift as a shadow. "No, you stay the hell away from me," I screamed, as bile forced its way into my mouth. My heart screamed from panic. As I turned, I heard a soft, raspy voice say, "We warned you." Tears flooding down my face, I groped wildly for the basement door. I could feel someone standing right behind me. I yelled in delighted surprise as my hands grasped the door handle. I heaved the door open and ran screaming up the stairs. As I got out of the building, I continued to run and scream as I welcomed the feel of warm, sticky summer air on my skin. I'd never been so happy to see the calm blue sky and the vicious midday sun. I ended up being taken to a hospital by a bunch of cops who'd seen me yelling and crying as I ran down the street. My face, my clothes were covered in dirt. My knees and elbows were scratched, but otherwise I was unharmed. I didn't dare tell them the truth. Instead, I said I'd had a panic attack, triggered by going down into the basement to find Timothy. The police searched the whole building, but the only thing they found in the basement that proved Timothy had been there at all was the trash bag he'd taken down. This time, the police have no leads. I miss Tim so much. I feel a numbness where he should be. I keep expecting him to just be around the next corner. His parents refuse to answer my calls. On the other hand, my parents won't stop calling. Suffice to say, I can't even think about the dark without bursting into tears. Even if there's no hope for psychological recovery, I don't think it matters. I still feel like someone's standing behind me constantly. The feeling is especially strong when my back faces a lightless room. I'm never alone now. They're always watching me, waiting for me to return to the dark. I've kept all the lights on constantly. I've not left my apartment in days. No matter how long I wait, though, I can feel them. I'm not even surprised. After all, I had not heeded the darkness's warnings. I get the feeling those who trespass are never forgotten, and certainly never forgiven. I work the night shift as a security guard at a downtown office building. It's an old structure, built in the 70s. While it's nothing special, the building has its fair share of quirks. Flickering lights, creaking pipes, and an elevator that makes the most unsettling groaning sounds whenever it moves. Usually the shift is quiet. Just me, the cameras, and the dim hum of the overhead lights. But a few nights ago, something changed. Around 2 a.m., I noticed someone on the cameras. A figure, he or it, I suppose, was standing in the lobby, just out of reach of the light. I couldn't make out his face, but his clothes looked old, like they didn't belong in this decade. He stood there for a moment, motionless, before moving towards the elevator. His gait was stiff, almost unnatural. He pressed the button and waited, but the elevator didn't move. I kept watching, thinking maybe it was a homeless guy who'd wandered in, but after a few minutes, something strange happened. The lights flickered once, then just went out completely. The screen showed the lobby cameras turning black. My heart raced. I waited for the power to come back on, but it didn't. It was just silence. I decided to go check it out in person. Stupid, I know, but curiosity got the better of me. Grabbing my flashlight, I made my way down to the lobby. As I walked, I could feel the oppressive weight of the darkness as it pressed in on me. Everything felt wrong. When I reached the lobby, it was pitch black, except for the weak beam of my flashlight. Swept the light across the room. It was empty. No sign of the man. But the air felt thick, like something was there, hiding just out of sight. The only sound was the soft hum of the elevator. I pointed the light at the elevator doors. They were open. The elevator has never moved, not in all the time that I've been here. Yet now it was wide open, revealing an abyss of darkness inside. I stepped forward, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The darkness inside the elevator seemed to pulse like it was alive, waiting for something, waiting for someone. My gut screamed at me to turn around, to run back to the security room, but I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor. Then I felt it. Something brushed against the back of my neck. It was light, almost like the softest whisper of a hand, but it was enough to send every nerve in my body into overdrive. I spun around, but there was nothing. Just empty air. Or so I thought. The flashlight flickered and I caught a glimpse, just a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. Something tall, too tall, was standing just behind me. I turned, heart pounding in my chest, but when I looked, the thing was gone. The lobby was empty. Except, I knew I wasn't alone. I could feel something watching from behind me, but every time I turned, there was nothing. No sound, no movement, just the suffocating weight of its presence. It was like the air was alive, pressing against me, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. The lights flickered again, and suddenly I was plunged into complete darkness. I heard the elevator doors creak as if they were slowly beginning to close. I took a step back, and that's when I felt it again. This time the touch wasn't soft. It was cold, firm, like a hand wrapping around my shoulder. I whipped around, expecting to see him, the man, the figure from the camera, but instead there was nothing. Only the endless black. I couldn't see. I couldn't breathe. My back pressed against the elevator doors as they started to close behind me. That's when I realized I was no longer just imagining the touch. The hand was still there, cold fingers digging into my skin. The whispering was louder now, right in my ear. A single, rasping breath that sent ice shooting through my spine. Before I could move, I felt something shift behind me, and the world tilted. The elevator moved. The doors, though closed, didn't feel like doors anymore. It felt like I was being pulled backwards into something. I stumbled forward, trying to escape whatever was behind me, but it was too late. I don't know how to explain what happened next. The walls stretched. They weren't walls anymore. The whole building felt like it was bending, twisting around me, pulling me towards the elevator. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. A cold, suffocating presence, dragging me closer and closer. The hand on my shoulder squeezed tighter, forcing me down to my knees. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The whispers were louder, coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I wanted to turn around to see whatever was behind me, but deep down I knew that if I did, it'd be the last thing I ever saw. Just as the pressure became unbearable, the lights flickered on, and everything stopped. The elevator was closed. The lobby was empty. I staggered back to the security room, my legs shaking. I pulled up the camera feed, hoping to make sense of what had happened. But the footage was gone. It was like nothing had happened at all. But every night since, I felt it. The thing in the elevator. It's waiting for me. It's always there, just out of sight, just out of reach. Every time the lights flicker, every time I pass the elevator, I can feel it watching. And I know, one night, when the lights go out, it's gonna pull me in. My name doesn't matter. I don't know anywhere else I can post this. I do evictions and repossessions for landlords. I know, scum of the earth. That's why my name doesn't matter. The last house we had a job at, all the tenants had just up and vanished without telling the landlord, and enough time had elapsed that we were set to clear out all their stuff. I happened across the following account that had been scribbled into a notebook and left in the basement. I won't say anything else except, well, just read it for yourself. My name is Sam. Please consider these my final words. It's been 3 days since the party, and I don't know how much longer my food or my sanity will last. He, or whatever it is at this point, has been knocking at my door for the past 3 days, punctuated only by the whispered attempts to convince me to open up. And the singing. The goddamn singing. My phone is dead, and the internet has been shut off, along with the power to the basement. I don't know why I'm scratching this account out. Probably just to have something to occupy my mind while I wait for the end. I feel like I should be scared, which at one point I suppose I was, but now it's just the constant dark, the endless knowing, the tiny flame from my lighter as I sit here waiting. Just waiting. I live in a house with 3 roommates. Well, maybe 3, though I suspect none of them are left at this point. I lived with my 3 friends, Raelyn, Ned, and Amy. Raelyn and Ned were philosophy majors like me, who I knew through a shared class. When a few months ago, the 2 of them asked me if I wanted to move into the house that they were renting, I jumped at the chance to live in a house that promised to be full of good conversation. Oh, right, and Amy's Ned's girlfriend. I can't remember her major at this point. Nursing, maybe. Not that it matters. It's an old house, built in the 40s or 50s, on a drained swamp, smack in the middle of Edmonton, near a mall, the university, Wyatt Avenue, and the train station. The location is great. It was only $2,000 a month for the 4 of us. Ned and Amy took the top floor, Raelyn got the main floor, and I took the basement. We still shared the kitchen and living room, but contrary to most roommate stories, we all got along great and never had any problems. Until now, that is. I don't even know what to call the current situation, though, if I'm being honest. All of this started maybe a month or so ago. It's summer now, so we're all off school and working at our various jobs to scrape together a bit of cash before the next semester starts. The extra free time had meant that we had time to start organizing the house a little bit better. In the back of the laundry room, tucked away behind the furnace, there's a door that's maybe 5 feet tall at most. It opened onto a small storage room that until a month ago was stuffed full of boxes, luggage bags, shelves, and miscellaneous junk. Raelyn and Ned wanted to clean the room out and make it into something of a secret hideout, calling it either the speakeasy or the bunker. It took Raelyn a few days, but quick enough the room was cleared and all the junk moved into the garage. The bunker, as Raelyn always referred to it, had cold, rough concrete floors, patchwork brick walls painted a mossy green in places, and a ceiling of exposed insulation crisscrossed with twisted pipes and wires. A small crawl space that was even lower than the main room led off into a space under the stairs, that no light seemed to reach. Roland, the broke university student he is, or was, I guess, decided not to furnish the room with anything aside from a small table and 4 chairs arranged in a circle around it. The room looked creepy, no matter who you asked, but everyone had to admit it was still pretty cool regardless. Something that has to be said about Roland and Ned is that were 2 of the biggest social butterflies I've ever met. They'd officially throw parties about once a month, but there were almost always people over more days than there weren't, especially Friday and Saturday. The bunker was admittedly a nice place to retreat from a party, have a shot, swap stories about who was hitting on who, which girls were single, that kind of thing. The oddness didn't begin until about a week after the bunker was clear. One night, some random day of the week, Tuesday maybe, I'd come home from work late and popped my bike into the back door. I stepped inside and didn't hear any voices. Nobody over tonight, I thought to myself as I descended the stairs to my room. My rooms are technically a separate suite, so I have my own door that leads to my space, at the start of the hallway that leads to the furnace laundry room in the bunker. I stopped as I was about to put the key into the main door. Over the low humming of the furnace, I could make out a sound that was faint coming from down the hall. Singing, maybe? Roland liked to sing when he was drunk, and he was drunk more often than not, so I presumed he was drunkenly doing some laundry down the hall and shrugged it off, going inside. I play keyboard and guitar and like to record and mix my own music, so after a quick dinner, I sat down to work on some music editing and shut the world out for a few hours. I stay up late, so I decided around 11 to do some laundry. I took my headphones off and took my basket out to the laundry room when I heard it again. The singing. It was definitely Roland singing, somewhat muffled and somewhat quiet, but singing nonetheless. Singing from the bunker. I couldn't tell what the song was, but Roland had some odd taste in music. I shrugged it off and threw my laundry into the machine. As soon as I banged the washer lid shut, the singing stopped, and I looked at the bunker door. I took a few steps over and knocked quietly. "Yes," Roland called through the door. I opened the door and the room was pitch black, the single light bulb dangling from the ceiling being off, with only the light coming in from the laundry room to light it. Roland was leaned back in a chair, his arms crossed and his legs propped on another. He was still dressed in the business casual work clothes he typically wore, and a half-empty bottle of cheap wine was on the table in front of him. "What you doing?" I asked, looking briefly around the cold, dark room. He didn't answer me, aside from nodding his head towards the bottle on the table, and then returning his eyes to mine. "All right," I said, breaking eye contact and giving a half-awkward smile as I shut the door behind me. Granted, me and Roland were never super close, but when we did chat, he was always a lot more animated and chatty, especially if he'd had something to drink beforehand. The silence was odd, but I'd seen him fall into a few contemplative states before, so I didn't pay much attention to it. The next week was pretty much the same as usual. People came, people went. Every few nights I would hear the faint singing coming from down the hall, mixed in with the hum of the furnace or the drumming of the washing machine. The next odd event came maybe a week after the singing. I was laying on the couch in the living room flipping randomly through YouTube videos when I sat up with a sudden start to a voice behind me. "Hey Sam, how was work?" Roland said, standing at the door of the living room with a beer in each hand and a smile on his face. "Hey, sorry, you scared me. It was good, pretty slow," I replied with a quick smile. "Beer?" Roland asked, holding out the can for me. "Sure, thanks. How was work for you today?" I asked, but received no reply. I turned around after a few seconds to see that Roland was gone. I shook it off and went back to watching videos, trying to push the odd feeling out of my head. Now, you might ask what was so weird about that, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't know Roland. The fact he had just appeared was what unnerved me. Roland isn't fat per se, but he definitely isn't thin. Long story short, you can always hear him when he's around. He's always blustering or stomping around or cursing at something, so to have him appear completely silently threw me for a loop. At this point, I was definitely feeling odd, and would only do my laundry during the day, trying whatever I could to keep away from Roland's bunker. I also kept a wary eye on the man himself, as he seemed to have become cheerier in the past 2 weeks. Where before he was a social but often gruff butterfly, he was now nothing but smiles and small talk whenever you saw him, and would have people over almost every night, if he could manage it. The last straw that finally made me tell someone what was going on was a Friday night that I'd come home from work and entered through the front door. I found Raelyn laying on the couch watching some old war movie on TV. I had a brief chat with him before I went back to the basement, stopping briefly to grab a drink from the fridge. I froze halfway down the stairs and my heart began to race. I heard the singing. I must have stood paralyzed on that staircase for a good 5 minutes, trying to rationalize how Raelyn could have made it downstairs and past me. Try as I might, there was absolutely no way he could have soundlessly gone behind me while I was opening the fridge. I would have seen him. Slowly, legs trembling, I walked backwards up the stairs and returned to the living room. The couch was empty, the TV still on. I looked around me, eyes wide. Was I going insane, I asked myself. I returned to the basement stairs again and slowly descended. Halfway down, the faint singing could be heard again. I fumbled in my pocket for my keys, hands shaking, and slammed my door open so quickly that I surprised even myself. I immediately took out my phone and texted Ned and Amy, asking them if they'd noticed Raelyn acting weird in the last few weeks. Both of them replied that they hadn't really, aside from the fact that he seemed happier. They never heard the singing, I thought to myself. Ned knew Raelyn better than I did, so I asked if he could talk to Raelyn and ask him how things were going, to which he agreed. I felt a bit better at that point, after which doubt began to creep in. He's what? Happy? Quiet? And has started singing? What the hell is creepy about that? I couldn't rationalize my fear to myself. Something was off, though, but I couldn't put my finger on what exactly it was. As I got into bed, I received a final text from Ned asking where Raelyn was, and when I told him he was in the bunker, he replied that him and Amy would go chat with him. I woke up the next morning, having tossed and turned all night, unable to get to sleep, with 1 or 2 nightmares that consisted of nothing but Raelyn singing his strange song in his strange room. I emerged from the basement late in the afternoon and found my roommates all busily cleaning up the house. Right, Saturday, party night, I thought to myself. Everyone said good morning as I made myself some coffee, and Ned winked at me when the two weren't looking. I sighed in relief, hoping that maybe I wasn't crazy, and that Ned could fill me in later on how the conversation had went. I helped with some of the cleaning before parking myself on the couch to wait for the party to start. I lost myself binge-watching some shows on Netflix. By 9 o'clock, the party was in full swing with maybe some 30 or 40 people over at the house. People were in the backyard having a fire. Some people were listening to records in the living room, and I'll admit I was pretty buzzed at that point. After chatting with the people around the fire for a bit, I got the impulse to bring out my guitar. And before you say it, I know, I'm one of those guys. I stumbled back inside and made it halfway down the basement stairs before my heart turned to ice in my chest and my stomach dropped. It was the singing, but it wasn't just one voice. It was 3. It sounded as though Amy and Ned were both down there, joining in the chorus. No, I said to myself as I rushed back upstairs. The room spun around me as I rushed back into the kitchen where someone asked if I was all right. It wasn't just someone who asked if I was all right, though. It was Roland. They say we all cope with fear in different ways, sometimes in pretty stupid ways, and The way I coped that night was by drinking myself into oblivion. The rest of the night became a blur as I poured as much alcohol into my stomach as I could possibly manage. I faintly remember hearing Raelyn tell a few people at the party that they should check out his bunker, but as far as I could remember, I was too gone to care. I woke up the next day with the sun shining bright on my face. I'd slept in the hammock out back. I checked my phone to find that it was almost 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and saw a few texts from my friends saying what a great time they'd had last night at the party. My head was pounding, and when I stood up, my stomach immediately betrayed me, and I puked all over the ground. I managed to stumble back downstairs through the mess of empty beer cans and Solo cups that littered, well, everything, and made it to my bed. My back hurt, my head hurt, my stomach hurt, everything hurt. I fell back into a terrible sleep that was nothing but nightmares. Nightmares of strange singing from the strange door, with infinite voices, the voices of the entire world joined to the chorus, drowning out my smallest thoughts. It wasn't a dream. God, I wish it was a dream. I woke up again when it was dark. It was pitch black outside of the tiny basement windows, but the noise was overwhelming. The singing of dozens of voices was echoing throughout the entire house. I tried to turn on the lights, but they didn't work. I checked my phone. No internet, no signal, no nothing. Just singing. The singing of 40 voices was joined together, but unlike before, it wasn't coming from the bunker. It was coming from right outside my door. I stood before the door and let the tidal wave of fear and sound wash over me, which was interrupted by a knocking at the door. "Sam, come have a drink with us. I want to show you something in the bunker. Everyone says it's awesome." Roland's voice echoed through the house, barely audible over the swelling chorus. That was 3 days ago. The knocking starts back up every hour or so, and Roland's voice rises over the chorus to invite me out into the hallway. The sun doesn't come up anymore. The singing never stops now. It's always dark outside the windows. My phone's dead. My computer's dead. There's no power. I'm not even scared anymore. It's too loud to sleep. It's too loud to be scared. My lighter's running out of fuel, so pretty soon I won't even be able to watch the dancing little light in my hand. I don't even know why I wrote all this. They've started singing to me recently, but it's not even singing anymore. It's just the same chorus, over and over and over again. Where, oh where is Quiet Sammy? Quiet Sammy can't be saved. Where, oh where is Quiet Sammy? Quiet Sammy, quiet grave. That's me. I'm Sam. Quiet Sam. The taxi jolted to a stop in front of the hotel, a monolith of grandeur and forgotten glamour. I paid the driver and stepped out, scanning the facade that had stood the test of time, hiding within the walled secrets that the city had tried to bury. My name's Michael Turner. I'm a detective by trade and obsession. I guess you could call me grizzled, hardened by years of chasing shadows in this unforgiving city. Today, I was to face an enigma that had danced just out of reach of law enforcement for decades. Room 313. As I walked towards the ornate entrance, memories of my last failed investigation ambushed me. I blinked against the sudden sting in my eyes. Emily, my partner and the more optimistic half of our duo, was gone. Our last case had taken her away, stolen by a faceless criminal we'd never managed to apprehend. Her loss was a wound, fresh and raw, and it had only served to drive my determination deeper. Not for revenge, but for justice, for answers. And that's what led me to room 313. Check-in was smooth. The concierge barely betrayed any surprise when I requested the key to the infamous room. His eyes held a flicker of something, though. pity, maybe fear. Doesn't matter. I grabbed the key and headed towards the elevator, the gleaming brass number 313 engraved on it, a constant reminder of my purpose. The hallway leading to 313 was surprisingly mundane. The carpet was dull, nondescript patterns that seemed completely at odds with the stories tied to it. It reminded me of the countless crime scenes I'd been to over the years. The mundane, wrapped around the macabre. Reality, dancing a deadly waltz with the unseen. I slid the key into the lock, the door creaking open, that had become a character in the city's darkest nightmares. I dropped my bag by the bed, the simple action resonating in the silence. Room 313. How many lives had it claimed? How many stories had it silenced? Each death was a question, each victim a mystery. I stared around, my eyes falling on a picture hanging on the wall. It was an old black and white shot of the hotel in its heyday, a beacon of opulence and power, now a monument to death. I moved to the window, staring out at the sprawling cityscape. Lights twinkled. Life moved on, oblivious to the room of death I now occupied. I couldn't help but think of Emily. Would we have cracked this case together? The thought was bitter, the loss suddenly immeasurable. After setting my bag down, I began the initial survey of room 313. My eyes swept across every inch of the room, every corner, every crevice, looking for clues. Anything could be a clue, a piece of a decades-old puzzle that had eluded so many before me. As I walked deeper into the room, I couldn't shake off the cold draft that seemed to follow me. It wasn't a steady, natural current, but erratic gusts that made the thin curtains flutter like disturbed spirits. I went over to the window, expecting to find it slightly ajar, but it was sealed shut, the paint around the edges thick and uncracked. The chill wasn't coming from outside. It was emanating from within the room itself. There was a peculiar hum in the air, a low, throbbing vibration that tickled the back of my skull. It was almost imperceptible, drowned out by the muted sounds of the city below. But in the quiet moments, between the distant honks of traffic and the occasional murmur of hotel staff in the corridors, I could hear it, persistent, unyielding. Next came the lights. They flickered with a life of their own, dancing shadows across the wall in a haunting ballet. Initially, I chalked it up to the hotel's old wiring, but there was a rhythm to it, a pattern that sent shivers down my spine. They seemed to react, dimming when I ventured towards certain corners, brightening when I approached others. And then there was the noise, soft whispers that drifted through the room, incoherent but palpable, a sudden clattering like something metallic dropping on the floor, even though nothing seemed out of place. The distant sound of children's laughter, chilling in its mirth. None of it made sense, yet all of it set my nerves on edge. I spent hours documenting everything, the cold drafts, the lights, the sounds. My recorder never left my side, a faithful companion that captured the eerie symphony of room 313. Yet as I sat on the edge of the ancient bed, the weight of the room's history pressing down on me, I felt a flicker of doubt. Could I really do this? Could I solve a mystery that seemed more rooted in the supernatural than the physical? As darkness fell and the strange noises of 313 grew louder, I slipped into a fitful sleep. With it came the dreams, though dreams feels like too soft a word. These were nightmares, woven with the tragic tapestry of room 313's history. Each night I found myself in a different area, witnessing events that I knew were reenactments of the murders that had made 313 famous. I was there, but not as myself, rather an invisible bystander, forced to watch the horror unfold with grim helplessness. One night I stood in the room as it was in 1940. I watched in horror as a woman in a flapper dress was strangled by an unseen force. Her terrified eyes locked onto mine as she clawed at her throat, her gasps for air growing weaker until they were no more. Another night I was back in the 60s. A businessman was pacing nervously in the room. Suddenly the lights went out, and when they flickered back, his lifeless body lay sprawled on the floor, his eyes wide open in an eternal stare of fear. Each dream was a horrific puzzle piece, a chilling glimpse into the atrocities that Room 313 had witnessed. They weren't just dreams. They were echoes of the past, reaching out to me, pleading for me to uncover their truth. While they provided crucial insights into each murder, they also took a heavy toll on my mental health. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, the echoes of their final screams still lingering in my ears. Each morning was a struggle to pull myself together, to remind myself of the task at hand, of the justice these souls deserved. The boundaries between sleep and wakefulness started to blur, and the shadows of Room 313 seemed to creep into my consciousness, even during the day. The constant whispering, the flickering lights, the reoccurring nightmares began to gnaw at my sanity. My hands shook as I pored over my notes, the victims' faces merging into one another, their terror becoming my own. The distinction between night and day began to blur in Room 313 as the supernatural happenings became my reality. The room, like an entity in its own right, started revealing itself to me. Ghostly apparitions began to manifest during the waking hours, their eternal forms flickering in and out of existence, like phantoms caught in a limbo between the past and the present. A spectral woman in a flapper dress would point to a hidden compartment under the bed, leading me to a pearl necklace, her eyes filled with a desperate plea. The translucent figure of the businessman from the 60s would appear next to the window, his hands reaching out towards the view outside, where a long-forgotten sign revealed the name of his company. Each apparition led me towards clues, their spectral guidance a chilling beacon in the darkness. As I pieced together their stories, their ties to Room 313, an eerie pattern began to emerge. The victims, all from different eras, shared one commonality: their birthday. Strange enough, it was the same as mine, a chilling coincidence that sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if 313 had chosen me, not just to reveal its secrets, but also to tie me to it in a deadly narrative. It seemed impossible, surreal even, but the evidence was right there. Birth certificates, diaries, newspaper clippings, all painting a chilling picture of shared fates and cursed timelines. It was like a dark thread spun from the loom of destiny, binding all of us to Room 313. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat amidst the clues, the links, the ghostly echoes of shared birthdays. I couldn't help but wonder what it meant. Was I just another character in this twisted tale, my fate tied to Room 313, just like the victims before me? Or was I here to break the cycle, to finally shed light on the dark enigma that had claimed so many lives? As I delved deeper into the mystery of Room 313, an undercurrent of unease grew stronger, wrapping itself around the room like a chilling shroud. The once benign whispers turned into malicious growls. The temperature dropped dramatically, and an ominous feeling of being watched began to haunt me. One afternoon I was flipping through a victim's diary, and the room's chandelier began to swing violently, almost as if in protest. Before I could react, the heavy fixture plummeted down, crashing onto the spot where I'd been sitting seconds ago. The close call left my heart pounding in my chest, my mind grappling with the reality and the danger I'd narrowly avoided. The very next day, while I was studying the faded pictures of a victim. An icy gust of wind whipped through the room, extinguishing the lights. The darkness was suffocating, impenetrable. A floorboard creaked, followed by a muffled sound of an approaching entity. I held my breath, feeling an intangible presence closing in. As a searing pain shot through my arm, I ignited my flashlight, revealing a shard of glass slicing into my skin. A mere second later, and it could have pierced my heart. Each encounter with the room's vengeful spirits left me with a chilling realization. The ghosts of Room 313 were growing more hostile. Their spectral warnings had turned into lethal threats. It was as if they were warning me off, their spectral forms forming deadly traps around each clue I discovered. But why? Didn't they want me to solve the mystery? Weren't they crying out for justice? Their stories begging to be heard? The malevolent resistance puzzled me, only fueling my determination to seek the truth. While going through a trunk filled with old photographs, I stumbled upon an aged black and white picture of a grand party. It was held in Room 313, which was far more opulent and lively than its present state. At the center of the revelry stood a distinguished man, no doubt the hotel's founder, surrounded by well-wishers. The back of the photograph bore the date, the same birthday that connected me, the founder, and the victims. An unsettling realization dawned upon me. Room 313 was where the hotel's founder, who also shared our peculiar birthday, held his grand birthday celebration. But amidst the joy and the laughter, a dark cloud loomed, a tragedy that would forever taint these walls. In a dusty, forgotten corner of the room, I found a secret drawer camouflaged in the intricate woodwork. It held a leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age. The script inside revealed the chilling past of Room 313. The entries were from the hotel's founder, documenting his life, and more importantly, his birthdays. One entry in particular was smudged with something that looked suspiciously like dried tears. It told a harrowing tale of a birthday party gone horribly wrong, an act of betrayal that ended in a bloody feud, resulting in several deaths, all born on the shared date. The founder himself, guilt-ridden and desolate, met a tragic end within the cursed walls of Room 313. A chill ran down my spine. That was the genesis of the curse. The room, steeped in guilt and fury of the bloody birthday event, became a vengeful entity, forever haunted by its past. It was as if the special energies were anchored to that fatal event, repeating the cycle of death on a shared date. And here I was, another soul born on that cursed day, standing amidst the spectral remains of the past. I was targeted, drawn into this macabre dance of death and hauntings by a date that was supposed to be a cause of celebration. Armed with my newly discovered evidence, I marched to the hotel's management office. The door to the manager's office was imposing, heavy mahogany that spoke of the grandeur this place had once held. I knocked, and the door creaked open, revealing a man hunched over a mountain of paperwork. "Detective Turner, what can I do for you?" he said, barely glancing up from his desk. I tossed the worn-out journal on top of the paperwork. "Explain this," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. He looked startled, his eyes widening as he picked up the old book, leafing through the brittle pages. His face went pale as he read, but he quickly regained his composure. "Yes, I'm aware of the room's history," he admitted, choosing his words carefully. "The tragic events that took place here are a sad part of the hotel's past. But you didn't think it necessary to inform me of this," I reported, anger flaring in my voice. "The room is cursed. It's a death trap for those born on a specific date. My birthday." "I assure you, Detective, we had no knowledge of this birthday curse," he responded, though his gaze wavered, hinting at deceit. "We thought the hauntings were just, urban legend." But the clues added up differently. The man was lying. The hotel had been capitalizing on the room's morbid history, using it as a selling point to attract guests, who were intrigued by the supernatural. I slammed my hand down on the desk, causing him to jump. You exploited the victims suffering for profit. You knowingly put people in danger. And for what? Couple extra bucks? He looked at me then, a hint of remorse flickering in his eyes, but he said nothing. Instead, he bowed his head in guilty silence. The confrontation left a bitter taste in my mouth. I had to uncover the truth, a truth the hotel manager had chosen to ignore. Room 313 wasn't just a paranormal oddity. It was a death trap. As I stood before the room, its dark aura seemed to pulsate with unseen energy, as if awaiting my return. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed open the door, stepping into the room that had now become an all-too-familiar haunting ground. With the room's secrets unveiled, the atmosphere felt more oppressive than before. The walls, stained with untold pain and sorrow, seemed to close in on me, but I squared my shoulders, fortified my resolve, and spoke into the silent gloom. I know what happened here. I know about the curse. A cold wind swept through the room, sending shivers down my spine. Shadows danced in the corners, forming spectral silhouettes of their victims. I know you're all victims of a horrendous betrayal. I promise you, I will bring justice to your untimely deaths. The response was immediate. A surge of paranormal activity washed over me. The ethereal figures appeared, their ghostly faces contorted in pain and anger. One, more solid than the rest, stepped forward. The Founder. His spectral eyes were full of torment as they bore into mine. "We seek peace," his voice echoed through the room, a chilling sound that seemed to come from every direction. "Can you offer us that, detective?" "I can, and I will," I responded, holding his spectral gaze. "But I need your help. I need to know everything." A moment of silence passed before the room convulsed violently. The chandelier swayed, lights flickered, and a cold gust blew around me, turning into a vortex. I felt the room closing in on me, the darkness creeping over my senses. "No!" I shouted above the cacophony, the room shaking as if the very foundations of the hotel were rebelling against me. "I won't be your next victim. I'm here to help you." With every ounce of strength I had left, I pulled myself towards the door, fighting against the unseen forces trying to keep me. The door handle was ice cold, numbing my fingers. I yanked it open and tumbled outside, gasping for breath. As I lay on the corridor, the carpeted floor underneath me, the room settled. The door slammed shut. The final showdown had been draining, the room testing my resolve and nearly claiming me in the process. The following days were a blur of restless activity. I pored over every bit of evidence I had on room 313, cross-referencing with public records and local news archives. The daunting puzzle began to piece itself together, painting a bleak picture of a hotel exploiting its dark history for profit. I arranged a press conference. The thought of standing in front of the media, my words echoing in their microphones, sent a shiver down my spine. But the victims deserved their stories to be heard. As the cameras began to roll and the reporters hushed, I took a deep breath and began. "Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today, not as Detective Michael Turner, but as a spokesperson for the forgotten souls of room 313. I told them everything. The birthday curse, the victims, the spectral encounters, most importantly, the hotel manager's role in exploiting the tragedy. Their silence told me they were shocked, but I could also see the wheels turning, connecting the dots. After the press conference, I confronted the hotel manager again. This time, I had the eyes of the public on my side. "You've played with lives, disregarded the dead. And for what?" I spat out, slamming the damned evidence on his desk. "A bit of profit? A little thrill?" The manager, pale and shaken, had no choice but to accept responsibility. We We'll take steps to correct this, to remember the victims properly, he stammered, his previous arrogance long gone. The hotel was forced to address its haunted past. Room 313 was sealed with a plaque put out as a memorial to the victims, acknowledging their unjust demise. A promise of reform was made to prevent further exploitation of the paranormal events within the hotel. As I left the hotel for the last time, I glanced back at room 313. There was a silence, a sense of relief that seemed to resonate from it. The victims were no longer a tragic tale spun for profit. Their memories were respected, their stories heard. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I'd carried their stories, their hopes for justice, and we had won. As I walked away, the haunting echoes of room 313 seemed quieter, softer, a step towards peace, towards redemption, for them as well as for me.